shoot. Fires from the top of the key and takes it home. The Liberty take a 2-point lead.
Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Francois, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Felicia. Thank you for joining us on that third episode, recapping the 3 games that the Liberty played this week. And let's start with the first game on Tuesday in Seattle for Stewie's return against her former team. The New York Liberty took care of business 86-78, and Breanna Stewart didn't disappoint in her first game back to Seattle with 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 1 assist. She was also helped by Sabrina Ionescu, who was lethal from the three-point line with 6 3-pointers and 20 points, and 11 assists also from Sloot that contributed really well despite a poor shooting night. Felicia, what did you make of that first game on the road?
It was a good win. Stewie coming back to a place that she called home for all her career up until now, and it was a great win for them. I think, starting out, they started a bit slow, but I think that's been the Liberty's thing this year so far, starting at a slower pace in the first half and then picking it up after. And Stewie did great. I think she was probably a little outside herself starting the game, but as it went on, she got into rhythm and she definitely had a great game. Sabrina was lethal. That's what we needed. We know she is lethal from the three-point line, and she showed that tonight. And even for Sloot being a general, not having any points, but the assists is what really helped the team, and she did the little things that helped the team win. So.
Yeah, definitely. It felt like the Liberty were never really in danger of losing this game. We knew beforehand that they were facing a Seattle team that obviously struggled in the first 2 games, especially that first game at home against the Las Vegas Aces. That was a blow-up win. So it never felt throughout the game that the Liberty were in real danger. But like you said, Felicia, I definitely felt like they could have have more sense of urgency. Every time it felt like Seattle was coming back, New York was sort of like upping up the tempo and the intensity, and they took care of business. But obviously, you had players like Drew Lloyd who scored 26 points in that game. But what did you like about the adjustments that the Liberty made in the second half?
Yeah, I think they play with pace. I think so far what they've been doing in the second half of their games is that they come out and they're strong defensively. And I think with Thornton and Betnijah Laney being that force on defense, it really helps to pick the whole team up. And they definitely play with pace, which I like. I wish they would do it all 4 quarters and not the second half only.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think the second half, they're always strong thus far in the season. I think my only concern is that first half for them. I think, looking down the line at other teams they'll play, it could be a bit concerning how they start the first half of games. It was Seattle. Obviously, they're a depleted team since Stewie left. And so, I was not worried that they would lose that game, but I do feel like they probably should have won by a bigger margin. And I just think that started off with the slow pace they started that game with. Seattle definitely came out swinging. But again, you have so many weapons on the Liberty team that, they were able to really get that win. So all in all, it was still a good game, but, definitely they have lessons to learn from it.
Definitely. All right, so let's jump into the second game. On Friday, it went down to the wire against the Chicago Sky, 77-76, with Breanna Stewart with the winning shot with 7 seconds left on the clock. That was a tough game, Felicia. What did you make of that game?
Thank God for Stewie.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like that game, again, they started a bit slow in the first half, which Chicago took advantage of. I mean, you never feel like the Liberty are completely blown out of a game, but the pace that they play at sometimes is just a bit too slow, and I do feel like teams are going to take advantage of that, and Chicago definitely tried to take advantage of that. They were doing a good job in the first half, and then the Liberty started to really claw back in the second half, which, this game really could have gone either way. And if it wasn't for Stewie's shot at the end, Chicago would have had this one for sure. I think they have to play with more urgency. I know they're still trying to figure things out as a new team, but the pace has to be faster. When they play with pace, they are very hard to defend. They are very lethal. Unfortunately tonight we got the opposite of what we wanted from Sabrina in the previous game. I think Coach Brondello said she wasn't herself tonight. So whatever that was, it definitely showed because she only had 5 points this game. They definitely needed her in this game. And I also think that they just got to figure out a way of getting the ball into Jonquel Jones more. I think when she gets into the post, she is also really lethal. And I think if they can just get her the ball more, especially in the second half, it's like they always get it to her in the first half. And the second half, she goes quiet. And I don't quite understand what the game plan is there. But they definitely need to get her more involved in these games.
Yes, I think as Liberty fans, this year we're definitely spoiled because we have so much talent and everybody calls us the super team. But the super team means that at any given night we have one of those star players that can make the difference. And so I think that, as fans, I think we expect that, it's going to be okay. They were struggling in the first half. But they're going to come back. They have Stewie, they have Sloot, Ionescu, Jonquel Jones. Any of them at any given time is going to, make us come back. And that's what happened in the second half. But like you said, I think they're still finding their roles and, sort of be more cohesive as a team. But there was definitely one player that got my attention in this game against the Sky. It was Betnijah Laney.
Yep.
Betnijah Laney, I think this season, obviously a role change compared to the last 2 seasons where she was the star of the team. And now I think she's always been strong defensively. But I think definitely this year she took on the mission to guard the best player on the other team. And so maybe I would say that in the previous game she was a little bit discreet offensively. But she turned it up a notch in this game with 17 points. She was aggressive all throughout the games, and for me, she was the MVP of the game. But there was also Kayla Thornton. I think I was telling you the other day that when they traded for Jonquel Jones with Connecticut, it was actually a free team transactions with the Dallas Wings that sent, obviously, Natasha Howard and Crystal Dangerfield to the Dallas Wings. But who did we get in the little mix to, make us feel a little bit better? We had Kayla Thornton. What can you tell us once again about Kayla Thornton and the impact on that team?
She's always going to have an impact. Defensively, she is a star, and I feel like we got someone for free almost. It's just like, I mean, it's just like she was just that gift and she keeps on giving and we appreciate that and we love her for it. Defensively, she is a monster and we need her because I think, between her and Laney, they are definitely that grounding force for the Liberty team. I think and offensively too. She definitely has contributed buckets as well, which has helped the team tremendously when they needed it most. So I'm loving what I'm seeing from Thornton. I loved what I saw from Laney. Laney is still an offensive powerhouse. Let's not forget that. Even though her role has changed a bit this year, she can do both. And so, I know the team is stacked, and people want to say it's a super team and all of that, but they got to gel. And you really can be called a super team when you gel and you're really taking out your opponents. And right now, I feel like they're still trying to figure it out. They're getting the wins, but you can tell they're still trying to figure everything out. And luckily, they have some great players on that team that can eke out wins. Again, thank God for Stewie.
Yeah. So overall, a tough game, but we're glad we got the win.
Yeah.
And basically, it was same story all over again. 2 days later, but in New York. So it almost felt like a little playoff series where you're going to face the same team 2 days later, and it was going to be interesting to see the adjustments that both teams were going to make. So let's jump into this game that happened today. And oh boy, a lot of things could be said.
A lot of things can be said, especially for that first half where it was exciting. I was happy. They were going off. I mean, they started out, I think, 11 zip, 13 zip?
13-0, yeah.
And you just felt like, man, they're in control. They're going to take this game. Everything was going well that first half. You're like, finally, they started the half strong. They started with pace, defense. Everything was clicking for them. And for some reason, second half, it all went downhill.
All right, well, let's go back to the first half first. All right.
All right, we'll start with good. We'll start with the good news.
Let's not reveal the score just yet. But what was interesting before the game, and I heard that the New York Liberty was the slowest paced team in the league. And considering the talent that we have on that team and the players that can sort of bring the tempo up, I was very surprised at that. But they proved us wrong and proved the stats wrong in the first half. Definitely, I really liked how aggressive they were on defense, which led to a lot of difficult shots for the Chicago Sky or some turnovers that allowed the Liberty to take advantage by upping the tempo and having some nice ball movement. And then second quarter, and we were all waiting for her, Marine Ionescu. She made a comeback. So she had made a comeback in the game in Chicago. She didn't play on Tuesday in Seattle because obviously she had a long trip from France to America and had just finished the French season. But that was basically today her first home game, and hearing from the crowd, people were happy, and we obviously expected great things from her. And that's what we got from the get-go. She had a couple of nice layups, like Statue of Liberty style, a couple of nice passes. And I was excited because she's going to bring something new to the team and just another weapon. So, overall, I was confident. We were up by 17 and a half. If you look at the stats, 46% field goal percentage versus 29% for the Chicago Sky. 3 for 14 from the 3-point shot for Chicago, which showed good perimeter defense from the Liberty. We dominated the boards as usual, 27 rebounds to 19, 16 assists to 6. So everything was going well for us.
It was clicking well.
But then the third quarter happened. The third quarter started really well. 19 points lead after 1 minute in the third quarter. And this is the time where James Wade, the coach of the Chicago Sky, decided to take a quick timeout. So Felicia, can you tell me what happened after that timeout?
Kayla Copper is what happened. She ignited to have 17 points in the third quarter alone. Mm-hmm. She went off and they weren't ready. I think they caught the Liberty on the back foot and they just kept going and they kept going. And the Liberty they went back to what they were doing in the first half in previous games. Yeah. They started playing slow. They relaxed. No communication. You had 2 or 3 people on one person, which left who open? Kayla Copper. Mm-hmm. And it's just like this lack of communication. You could just see it. They were all over the place, and Chicago made them pay from the third quarter on. And it was hard to watch at some point because you just felt like all of a sudden the Liberty just became discombobulated and they couldn't get it back together. They tried, but it was too much.
Yeah, and so obviously, a lot of people doubted that the Chicago Sky was going to do anything this season. Obviously, when you lose Candace Parker, Courtney Vandersloot, Emma Miesemann, Ali Quigley, that's a lot of top players that you lose all at once. So when you look at the power rankings, unfortunately for the Chicago Sky, a lot of people predicted that they would be either the bottom team or the second team from last. But you gotta give them props. You gotta give props to James Wade, who managed to build a good roster with players that are gonna attack the basket, gonna be aggressive, that are gonna shoot threes, and never give up. And that's exactly what happened in the third quarter. The Chicago Sky made a comeback, and fourth quarter, it was tight. We were in the crowd. Obviously, we went from super confident in the first half, thinking we are going to have a good Sunday afternoon, to all of a sudden being kind of quiet, a little tense.
To nervous.
To very nervous, right? And so we went back and forth in the fourth quarter, but ultimately, what went wrong for the Liberty?
You gave Chicago momentum.
Yeah.
Once they got the momentum in the third quarter, they did not let up, and the Liberty just couldn't really get it back. I mean, even with Stewie trying to get, her shots in there and tying it up and trying to keep the team in the game, Chicago had the momentum, and they just kept going, and you could tell just defensively, the defensive breakdowns for the Liberty, especially with miscommunication. You had just double screens, and then people didn't know who their assignment was.
Yeah.
You could just tell that it just felt like Sloot was missing her assignment. Sabrina was missing her assignment. It just looked like they just didn't know what to do at that point, and Chicago just had the momentum, and they just kept going with it, and they rode that wave to a win.
Yeah, and so the final score was 86-82 for the Chicago Sky, and we found out later on that it was the biggest blown up lead in the history of the New York Liberty. They had a 19-point lead that they blew up in the second half, and that was tough. I'm not gonna lie. When we left the Barclays this afternoon, it felt like someone knocked me out. I was like, what did just happen? But I think you pretty much pointed out what went wrong in the second half. Miscommunication on defense. I think we rewatched the game after we came back from the game, because I wanted to know exactly what exactly went wrong in the second half, and it was glaring. Like, the miscommunication on defense at this level, you're not gonna win a game when you have players that are leaving other players open or sort of helping another player but don't communicate to switch. It was hard to watch. It was hard to watch. So unfortunately, there's still a lot of growth that we're going to have to get to the level that we want.
And with Copper having the hot hand, leaving her open at any point in the second half, to me, was just foolish.
Mm-hmm.
Once you saw that she had the hot hand, yes, she's going to get shots off. She definitely had just a couple contested shots, but most of her shots, she was open. By leaving her to go try to help another teammate, that's just not smart, especially because she had the hot hand all along in the second half. And I think for Chicago, you can't sleep on Chicago. I know what these power rankings might say, but you have Courtney Williams. She did some damage to the Liberty a couple years ago. I remember.
Yes.
I remember her
Definitely.
with Atlanta. You can't sleep on her. She is an excellent player too. You can't sleep on Copper. Obviously, she is going to be that. She's the top player for them. You can't sleep on Mabry either. She's aggressive, and she became more aggressive in the second half and got some shots up. I think they just relied on that 19-point lead and thought that cushion would help them throughout the second half. And once Copper started making all these threes, that lead was quickly erased in about 2.5-3 minutes. So yeah, Chicago is still a team, I think, still a force out there that you can't sleep on them.
So we gave them the first punch on Friday, and they definitely came back with a jab this afternoon. And they were just a better team, even though we felt that we were going to cruise in the first half. Overall, the Chicago Sky today were the better team. And when you look at the stats, they turned from a 29% field goal percentage in the first half to a 44, close to 45% overall in this game. They shot close to 40% from the frees. They had 10 more free throws than the Liberty. But I think what was also really, when you look at the stats, they had 8 blocks and, less turnovers than the Liberty. So overall, kudos to the Chicago Sky for getting that win. I don't know if we'll face them again later in the season, but I'm definitely looking up to that matchup again.
And can I just say, what is the deal with Jonquel Jones in the second half?
Yeah.
She starts strong, they feed her the ball, and then she's a ghost in the second half. It's been that way for these past few games, and I don't get it. Like, she is a force in the paint, and you need to get her the ball. I know she had a couple of turnovers. She had a block. She had a turnover. I just think you gotta keep feeding her. She is strong in the paint, and I don't get why she's always at the 3-point line. Yes, she's good at making threes, but her bread and butter is in the paint.
Yeah. I mean, we know that she was injured prior to the season, and it's going to take some time for her to, get a full conditioning back. But the talent is obviously there. She's a former MVP. And when you have a technique and a size, you got to make other teams pay. And like you said, it's been very strange because if you look at her stats, she's been scoring about 9 to 10 points a game. But most of the time, all those points come from the first half. When they feed her in the paint, and she had a couple of frees, and then AWOL in the second half. And you look at the Chicago Sky, there are only today 8 players available on their roster, and only one true center with Elizabeth Williams. I don't understand why they didn't feed her the ball. But, I guess that's a question to ask to Sandy Brandello, or for them to review tapes of the games. But they got to make Jonquel Jones more involved in each game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she got double teamed a couple of times in the second half, but she needs to be inside. I think they definitely got to play more for her, because they're gonna double Stewie. That's most teams, that's their game plan, is to double Stewie. So somebody should be open, and it really should be her. If Sabrina is not shooting threes well, it really should be Jonquel Jones.
Now, obviously, a lot of fans said Breanna Stewart covers so many grounds that we tend to forget about, the missteps or the shortcomings of the teams that she's playing for. And I gotta ask Sabrina Ionescu. Now, obviously, she's one of the core players of that team. When they picked her as the number 1 draft pick, they knew that they were going to build the team around her. And obviously she had that big injury in the bubble that she still sustained the following season. But last year was a breakout season for Sabrina. She dominated. She was a leader on that team. A lot of pressure. A lot of people were like double teaming her, and she show out every single night. But now this time around, her role is different. Obviously, you have Breanna Stewart. You have Courtney Sloot now that is most of the time carrying the ball on offense. And so she's sort of becoming like this catch and shoot player. And so obviously Sabrina wants to win. So she will do whatever it takes for the team to win. But on nights where the shots are not coming in, then what happens? And I don't know if you noticed, but they were targeting her on defense.
Yeah, they were. I think she definitely got better defensively.
She definitely improved, yeah.
This year. She definitely improved. But I just don't think she should be a catch and shoot 3-pointer. She has a lot more to her game. I wish I would see more, like, even mid-range shots. I feel like for her going to the basket, she has some great moves going to the basket today, but then she had other moves going to the basket where she easily got blocked. And I wish she had more of a mid-range shot. I don't quite see that. I'm not saying she doesn't have it, but you just don't see it that often in the game. So if she can do that more, where they don't have to rely on her for the 3-point all the time, because you're gonna live and die by the 3. Like most teams, if she's off one night, you're gonna die by the 3 if that's what you're depending on. So, I think for her, they're still figuring it out though.
Yeah.
I think they're still figuring out everyone's roles this season, and it'll click. But you only got 40 games this season, and you need to get that clicking fast. So.
All right. Let's not push the panic button just yet.
No, I'm not panicked.
It's
I'm
obviously a lot of new players on that team. They need to gel. They need to figure things out. And just because you have talent doesn't mean that you're gonna figure things out right away. And also, let's not forget. And I don't know if you noticed during the game, we saw it. That it seems like Sabrina was injured. I mean, if you look back at the press conference from after the game against the Sky on Friday, Brandello said that she didn't want to take any risks with Sabrina because she didn't feel 100%. And then when we look at the game today, it seems like she had a thigh injury. I mean, obviously we're not reporters or doctors, but what did you notice?
Yeah, I mean, she definitely had, when she was on the bench, she definitely had that leg wrap. She definitely had her thigh wrap. So I was thinking it's possible a hamstring issue. Maybe something got tweaked, and she can still play, but they're trying to be careful with her, not to make it worse. But she definitely, every time she came back to the bench, she definitely had that warmer.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting what it's called, but yeah. She definitely had her leg.
I use one, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, so she definitely had her leg wrapped. So, I mean, she definitely did what she could in this game. I mean, I feel like she did a little bit better defensively, but yeah, by the second half they were targeting her. I think she can become the weak link if they're not careful. If they start to play lax and teams start to gain momentum, they tend to go after her because she's just not as quick. And when teams start to play with pace, if she's even slightly injured, she's not going to outrun another player. She's not going to be like Laney or Thornton. So yeah, I think they definitely are probably going to have to watch her minutes, try to figure out what's going on with her leg there, and just definitely, be mindful.
But she's a fierce competitor, and if she was there on the court, that means that she felt like she could contribute and do something for the team to win. So I'm not so worried. And like you said, it's a longer season than prior. So the good thing is that they're gonna bounce around real quick because next week they already start playing on Wednesday. So we'll be covering next week the 3 games that the Liberty are gonna play. So on Wednesday they will face the Minnesota Lynx at 7 p.m. Followed by a game against Atlanta on Friday in Atlanta. That's gonna be an interesting game against an up and coming team. And they'll end up the week against the Dallas Wings at 1 p.m. Can't wait to see Satu Savali against the sister Nyara Savali. So those are gonna be interesting game next week, and
I think they're gonna be tough games.
Yeah,
because
tough games.
Especially even Atlanta's unpredictable. I know they just lost to to Las Vegas, but they only lost by like 4 points. I mean, they definitely were trying to take it to them. So the Liberty, they got a lot ahead of them.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to those games, and thank you so much for listening to our podcast. And let's go Liberty!
Let's go Libs!